now they're the blueberry and cherry cake donuts at Donut King.
It's a big deal for us. We all enjoy. We have.
I'm not. I don't like a lot of the. I don't like all the topping. I like more of the. Yeah. Yeah.
No, behind you.
Okay, never saw that right in the blue shirt.
Yeah. Don, Mayhew. Don's already got his glasses.
What's that?
Okay.
Oh, our music program? No, I did pay the. I'm not prepared to pay a premium for my.
Yeah, Boy Scouts.
No, not yet.
They're stationed over Presbyterian Church on Tuesday.
It'll come down.
And then Methodist group is 125. I mean, there's charter organizations, Methodist.
I'm all for people crying. I know. It is. It is.
Oh, evening, Mayor.
Ready to go.
Are we on? Okay.
Yeah, you like it, man. Everything's thermal.
Well, the whole
How's the heat on?
He gives us signs.
Good evening, everyone. Do we have anyone here from the
Minister Alliance? I might ask. I don't recognize anybody.
Is there anyone here from the Ministerial Alliance? Okay, if not, we'll open the meeting. We have some scouts here tonight, and I'd like to ask Aiden to come forward and lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we jump into the public hearing, we have a couple of guests tonight. Senator-elect Brown and Representative-elect Mayhew. Would you like to come forward and introduce yourselves and say a few words?
Right here, Jesse. Right here.
On this side. Oh.
Right there.
Justin Brown, the new senator-elect of the 16th District. Thank you all for having us here tonight. I look forward to working with the city of Rolla. Thank you.
Look at that, short and sweet.
Yeah.
Jonathan may have warned you that I'm probably not that brief, but my name's Don Mayhew, and I'll be representing the 121st District, which includes the northern part of Pulaski County and the northwest corner of Phelps County, which is all of Rolla, by the way. And I appreciate the citizens of Rolla that voted and came out and voted, but also especially the ones that voted for me. Appreciate it, and I look forward to working with City Council in the future on issues that maybe I can help with up in the state capitol. I was born and raised in this district and graduate of the University of Missouri at Rolla when we still called it the University of Missouri at Rolla. But thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have our wish list that we're starting to write. Thank you, gentlemen. First item on the agenda is a public hearing for an ordinance amending Article 3, Chapter 42 pertaining to signage. James?
Thank you. To start off, I wanted to talk about the impetus for the revision of the sign ordinance. On July 16th at the City Council meeting, 6 local business owners, Executive Director of Rolla Area Chamber of Commerce, who spoke on behalf of several business owners in attendance, spoke to the fact that temporary signage should be permitted, including construction signs and inflatable signs. At the behest of the City Council, the Community Development started working on a sign ordinance that would permit such signage. Shortly thereafter, the review process began, and in September, the members of the Community Development Department and the City Administrator met with 5 business owners, a representative of the business owners, and 1 local real estate agent to discuss the most recent draft of a new sign ordinance. kind of used them as a sounding board to get their opinions. It was an official committee. While there was one concern about temporary off-premise signage in residential areas, most of the group were satisfied with the type, size, and duration of temporary signage permitted. And through research, it was found that a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision had changed the way in which signs may be regulated, especially non-commercial temporary signage, which had to be taken into consideration when drafting the new ordinance. This case is called Reed versus the Town of Gilbert, and it was a claim that the town of Gilbert was violating the free expression clause of the First Amendment against a church who had they would put a directional sign at the corner on Sundays to show people where they were. So the government regulation of speech is content-based if a law applies to a particular speech because of the topic discussed or the idea or message expressed. Some facial distinctions based on a message are obvious, but others are more subtle. Laws favoring some speakers over others demand strict scrutiny when the legislator's speaker preference reflects the content. So basically all this is saying is that you cannot have different regulations for different speakers nor different content. And so, as you can see over here, this was their sign regulations. These are the three most significant ones because they're non-commercial speech. And they treat ideological signs more favorably than the other two. And so it was found to be facially unconstitutional because it was content-based. And so there was some dissent, although everybody voted for it on the Supreme Court. One person said the sign code is content, or the consequence is that our communities will find themselves in an uninviable bind, and they will not be able to they will have to either repeal the exemptions that allow for helpful signs on streets and sidewalks, or else lift their sign restrictions altogether and resign themselves to resultant clutter. And as the years go by, courts will discover that thousands of towns have such ordinances, many of them entirely reasonable. And as the challenges to them mount, courts will have to invalidate one after the other, and this court may soon find itself a veritable Supreme Board of Sign Review. And the APA, among others, wrote I don't know how to say that word, but it means friend of the court, and it's basically gave them information about how this would, they basically said they were concerned that local governments will face a nearly impossible task in crafting constitutional sign regulations if they are unable to utilize a common sense classification of temporary signs based on their functions. So this is just to give you an idea of how serious this issue is. Now, our existing temporary sign regulations there's about 24 exemptions. As you can see, these are the exemptions that we have now: political signs for certain amount of days, real estate signs, and advertising drives or events of charitable, educational, or religious nature. So you can see the similarities between us and the town of Gilbert. Now, we came out with some goals. First of all, we had to create an ordinance that is content neutral and does not have different regulations for different speakers. In a concurring opinion of Reed, a non-exhaustive list of ways in which signs can be regulated was submitted. Remember, this is non-exhaustive. So we can regulate signs based on whether or not they're off-premise or on-premise. And it's a misconception that says that if you have to read it, it's content-based. Actually, you have to read it to be able to tell if it's off-premise or on-premise. So you can distinguish between those: freestanding versus attached, basically different types, illuminated versus unilluminated, and placement on commercial versus residential properties. Another goal was permit a wide range of temporary signs, including inflatable signs is one of the ones that we heard at the meeting. We also heard construction signs, which is off-premise temporary signage in residential areas. So that was another one of our goals: off-premise signage in residential areas. We have to ensure that the public has ability to freely express themselves through signs throughout the year. So if you just restrict it to just election times, then you may be favoring people that are more likely to express themselves during election times, whereas there could be political or social movements going on at any time of the year. Limiting discretion is important because it can become, well, you want to limit discretion. I won't go into it. And the mantra that we have to follow is regulate the medium, not the message. So getting into what we changed. One of the things that you should do is try to limit the exemptions, because that's a lot of the times where you get in trouble. So we reduced it from 24 to 12. Government signs, including public schools that place signs on their property, are exempt. Signs required by law, so the notice signs that we put up for rezonings, that would be exempt. 2 pole signs at the entrances and exits in non-residential areas. Before, we could just say directional signs in commercial areas were exempt, but that would be content-based. So you have to find different ways to say what you want, to say what you, to regulate the signs. So flags, these have to be attached at one end on a staff or pole, otherwise they become either a banner or something else. Internal signs, balloons, internal signs are the stuff in the windows. We don't regulate that. Flashing signs are prohibited, signs that emit smoke and those sorts of things. Snipe signs, these are snipe signs right here. A snipe sign is a sign tacked, nailed, posted, pasted, glued, or otherwise attached to trees, poles, stakes, etc., or placed on any public property or in the public's right-of-way or on any private property without the permission of the property owner. So we gave very detailed definitions. That's part of reducing the discretion of the government, reducing their discretion and how these are regulated. So that's why the definitions are so long. So let's talk about off-premise and on-premises. Well, there's debate between if it should be premises or premise, but because we have to know what these are to be able to decipher what the code says about it. So off-premise sign is an outdoor sign that contains a message or messages that directs attention to a specific business, etc., or other commercial or non-commercial activity, or contains a non-commercial message about something that is not sold. On-premise signage is a sign that contains a message or messages and design that relates to an individual business, event, etc., or other commercial or non-commercial commercial activity sold, offered, or conducted on the same property. I think we all know what it is, but wanted to get that out of the way. In addition, all non-commercial speech is on-premise speech. So that's important to know. That was decided by the Supreme Court. Missouri state law we found, now at the Planning and Zoning Commission there was a question about real estate signs, and we hadn't really talked it all out with staff, and so I figured that, as you can see, it has a logo and it has the name of the company on here. So at the Planning and Zoning Commission, I did say, while you can have the you could say for sale and have the agent's name on there, and you can have a phone number, I said if it has a logo or a logo or the company name, I would consider that off-premise signage. And after discussing it with administration and management, we decided that according to this state law, you have to allow it, even if you have to allow these things on real estate signs all year round. And if there's a logo on it or a company name, we're not going to call that off-premise just because it has a logo or company name, because the company is associated with selling that property. So just to be clear, real estate signs, whether temporary or permanent, because you do have these also, are permitted throughout the year and can be permanent or temporary. Most must conform to other restrictions such as size and height. So now, off-premise signage, we permit only temporary signage can be off-premise signage, and off-premise temporary signage shall not be posted for more than 14 consecutive days in any given quarter of a year. And such signage shall be removed within 14 days of receiving notice from the city of Rolla. So, for instance, a construction sign, or let's say the gun show sign that they post on. Let's say they post it on the corner on private property, and they get that property owner's permission. Those types of signs can be there for 14 days per quarter of a year, but they must be removed afterwards. That's the only time off-premise signage is allowed, and it has to be temporary. So, residential areas, I try to break this down as easily as possible. So, there's 2 categories of residential areas, because you can regulate different uses within residential zones differently. So, residential areas with single family and duplexes. The maximum area of all signage is 24 square feet altogether. It can be temporary or permanent. So if you had a 12-foot permanent sign, you could have a 12-foot temporary sign. Maximum height is 6 feet. Number is unlimited. Type is temporary freestanding signs, wall signs, pole or ground signs, poles and ground signs are permitted. So these are the permanent types of signs that are permitted. I couldn't find a smaller one, but you have to find a way to allow for private drive signs because you just can't exempt them anymore because that's content-based. This is a wall sign, just small little wall signs, on a house you might have. And these are the temporary freestanding signs. These are different. These do not include feather banners or inflatable sandwich board signs or inflatable signs or balloon signs. These are typically H-frame signs, H-frame yard signs, but they can also, as long as they don't are not permanently anchored in the ground, then they will be temporary freestanding signs. You can look at the definition. So that's the only type of temporary sign in residential areas. Now, for residential areas of multifamily subdivision entrances and exits, so in a subdivision you might have one parcel that has just the exit and entrance sign. That's what that's talking about. And permitted non-conforming uses not located in a single-family house or duplex. So these are permitted, daycare centers, things like that. They are, as far as temporary signage goes, they're allowed the same amount, 24 square feet, the same number, unlimited, and 6 feet, and they cannot be higher than 6 feet. As far as their permanent signage goes, it's one wall sign per building, one ground or pole sign per entrance or exit. Area of each sign is 64 square feet, and the height is no more than 15 square feet. Before they were these uses were permitted one detached sign and one attached sign only, but it makes sense to have one detached sign for each exit and entrance and one for each apartment building. So that's
James?
Residential areas.
James,
Yeah.
how did you come up with 24 square feet on the temporary signs?
At one time, we were thinking about political signs. And
Because a 4x8 sign then could not be used in these areas.
I know, it was 32 square feet for a long time, and then at one of the meetings, it got turned to 24 square feet, just because talking back and forth in discussion, and we kind of said, well, 24 square feet is probably enough. But that could easily be turned back into 32 square feet, because that is the size of a plywood sheet, and that would be no problem to turn it to 32 square feet.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. Some of these things were just the result of the debate of square footage, and I was arguing sort of the 32, others were arguing much less. Several people, when we brought the group together, really felt the 4x8s in the front of a residential home was excessive and big, and I thought, well, but people have the right to express that. So, again, those are numbers that if council says, let's tweak this and change that up to 32 square foot, I think a 4x8 makes sense. So, a little bit arbitrary, but the result of a collective effort.
Quick thing too, James, if you did have a 4x8 or 32, 24, 32, whatever was decided, you wouldn't be allowed to have any other sign, is that right? Because you've taken up all your square footage.
Right.
Warning signs, all that, unless you can't see it from the right of way. Non-residential areas, temporary. This is a very simple breakdown. So you get 2 per tenant space, except when an inflatable or balloon sign. If inflatable or balloon sign, you only get 1. As you can see on the far left and the far right, these are huge signs, huge sometimes. These are the ones, the difference between an inflatable sign and a balloon sign is that constant air is flowing through the air compressor here and it moves. These can get very tall. Balloon signs, you see those a lot at like firework event, temporary firework stands and things like that. And so if you have any one of these, you can only have one sign. Otherwise, you could pick any 2 of these. And these are all of them. Everything you see here. Now, the only time you're permitted to have a temporary sign on the sidewalk is as follows. If there is less than 5 feet between the building frontage of the tenant space and the public's right-of-way, in other words, if your entire tenant space has less than 5 feet between the frontage and the lot line fronting a right-of-way, then you can have either sandwich board signs, and you can only have, you can have 2. There's some specific restrictions on those. They can't be more than 5 feet high. I think it's 16 square feet or 24. We'll see about that. Oops. And then, or in the other case, you can have 1 temporary freestanding sign in each flower pot if less than 2 square feet in area, less than 5 feet in height, The flower pot is watered and maintained by the tenant, and those flower pots are on a public sidewalk and abut the tenant space responsible for locating such a sign in said flower pot. So those little tiny flower pots, those little tiny signs that some people put in the flower pot, we figured let's do that also. So that's pretty simple. Now, I just wanted to show you here to explain something. This is Jimmy John's, and then you have that little yogurt shop right here. So as you can see, Jimmy John's has frontage here, and so that's their front yard basically. It's this right here. So they could have a they don't need to put their sandwich board sign or temporary signs on the sidewalk. Now, whereas the yogurt shop right here, all of frontage of their tenant space has no front yard, and so therefore they could have a sandwich board on the sidewalk, only a sandwich board, or if they don't have flower pots. So there are slightly different different regulations for different temporary signs because they're the nature of the sign. So temporary freestanding signs, banners, and feather flags shall not exceed 32 square feet. Sandwich board signs shall not exceed 16 square feet, and inflatable and balloon signs are limited to 75 square feet. Those are huge. I mean, sometimes they can be the big, characters, the cartoon characters, and you would use a 3D measurement for that. And height restrictions for temporary freestanding signs and sandwich board signs are 5 feet, and all the rest are 24 feet in height. Now, here's some general restrictions on temporary signs. Except for movement on inflatable signs, mechanical motion, illumination, EMC technology, and electronically activated changeable copy is prohibited. Manual changeable copy is only permitted on a sandwich board sign. So for balloon signs and inflatable signs, the minimum setback is the height. It has to be equal to its height because they're so tall and they could fall over and cause an accident. Everything else that is the same as permanent signs. In addition, inflatable signs are not permitted with 100 feet of a residential zoning district, and air compressors must be turned off between the hours of 11 and 7 a.m. This is because they have a motor going and it can be loud and a nuisance to residential areas. So there are some residential protections in here. In addition, no temporary or portable sign that you can basically see over a fence, 7 foot, shall be within 100 feet of a residential zoning district. Okay, other noteworthy changes was we legalized moving graphics for electronically EMCs, which is electronic signage. Before, you had to have a static image for 8 seconds. We took that away. We just said as long as it's not flashing and it's not full motion graphics, you can have it, but it has to be 100 feet from residential areas. We also legalized roof signs in CC and C3 only because it's part of our history. We have at least two roof signs, and it's part of the character of our city throughout history. One of them is iconic. We took away the front setback for signs for multiple reasons. One of them is we instead of measuring from the pole, we measure from the edge of the sign. So by doing that, which is the proper way to do it, by doing that, we would make a whole bunch of signs non-conforming if we didn't get rid of the front setback. In addition, arbitrarily setting your signs back from the roadway can reduce the detection time, which can cause more distractions. Recognize mechanical motion and rotating signs. We already have a mechanical motion sign. It's that big sign along the highway for the West Side project, and we also have rotating signs. You might see those at barber shops. So we recognize them that they're legal C2 and above. So by a 6-2 vote, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that the City Council deny this proposal. And this recommendation was given because of 3 reasons. Off-premise real estate signs were only permitted for a limited time in residential areas because we were interpreting logos or company signs as off-premise messaging or commercial messaging that was off-premise. So we fixed that. They're allowed all year round now. Complaint-driven enforcement is insufficient method of enforcement and unfair, and there were too many gray areas. I did want to mention that portable marquee signs, they are prohibited. First of all, because the only time you can have changeable copy is on a sandwich board sign.
On a what?
A sandwich board sign is the only portable sign that can have a changeable copy. Now, I was asked at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting if this was going to increase the number of signs and if that was good for a community. And there's no doubt when you allow more types of signs, temporary signs, it's going to increase the number of signs, logically. And of course, temporary signage is going to add clutter, which can't be good for safety, traffic safety, or aesthetics. But in all, this ordinance does promote traffic safety and aesthetics because it sets a limit on those temporary signs. That's actually it. If anybody had any questions, this will be the first read and public hearing.
James, I got 3. So the portable marquee signs are prohibited, not because they're portable, but because they're portable with changeable content.
That's correct.
So I'm not sure what changeable content means.
I mean, changeable copy. Changeable copy is this stuff that you could take off the letters and move around.
So
the letters.
if that was a piece of plywood and somebody painted that on, is that allowable then? I'm zeroing in on what do you mean by changeable?
So changeable, it's exactly what it look. I have the exact definition.
Okay, so in my example, if that was a piece of plywood and somebody painted those letters on, would that be prohibited or not be prohibited?
No, that would be a temporary freestanding sign. Now, it wouldn't be allowed to flash or be illuminated.
Okay, but it'd be allowed.
Yes, if it didn't have changeable copy.
Next question. P&Z's concerns about the off-premise real estate signs for limited time. Did they have a recommendation on what they felt was an appropriate time?
Well, they said, not exactly, but I believe what they were trying to say is that you have to have, it might take a year to sell your property, so you have to have them all year round. And when I said, are you saying that you would prefer?
So what do we have now for what's proposed for the real estate signs?
What's proposed for the real estate signs?
We fixed it.
But okay. Real estate signs is just like any other.
Okay, so this is not an issue anymore.
No, not
Correct.
at all.
Okay,
No.
taking care of that. Second one there, complaint driven. I guess I see both sides of it, but I didn't see in the ordinance where we said enforcement is complaint driven.
No.
Okay, so why is that a concern by P&Z?
Because that's how it's been enforced in the past, and that's
Right, but P&Z is asked to approve the ordinance as written, and it's not written based upon complaint driven.
I told them directly that that's not something you would put in a code. You wouldn't say this code shall be enforced in a systematic way and not on a complaint-based manner. You would just never put that in a code. But they were just, so.
Okay, so the complaint-driven aspect, like some of our other nuisances, is a policy position.
Right.
Okay. So again, is that, maybe I should ask Matt since he was, no, I'm just, P&Z is voting against something that isn't in this ordinance on that particular point.
It seemed to me that the main problem with it was that it would increase the number of signs in the community. That seemed to be the main concern. This idea that it was complaint driven was kind of secondary to that, and that they felt like that was, if we're going to create legislation, we should create the mechanism by which we fund the enforcement of that mechanism, similar to what we did with the new half position we give to Brady for the environmental services when we said, we want to make sure the dumpsters are pulled off the street. If we're going to make this a law, then we need to have the resources available to enforce it.
And the only real way to do that would be required for every temporary sign that goes up has to get a permit. And that was a big discussion early on. Do we want to try and require somebody to come in and get a permit every time they want to stick a for sale sign up? And the decision was not to do that. Then that leaves us where we don't have the ability to sort of proactively regulate. We're doing it when we see a sign out there or get a complaint. So that was kind of a fundamental decision that we made early on in trying to understand what council was looking for. We didn't sense that there was a desire to require a signed permit and a fee every time somebody wants to put up a temporary sign on either their home or their business. And that's the difference between the response on the enforcement.
We have Kathleen out there driving, so we're enforcing it that way also. But it is
Correct.
secondary, I think, that people complain. But I wouldn't say that that's the only way that we enforce.
Well, I've been told that if they see it, then they'll make a note of it and post it.
Yeah.
If they're on the way to a.
So when we were at P&Z, did we say specifically that we're operating on a complaint-driven basis, or that's was an assumption?
No, they brought up the top, and I said both of those things. It's complaint based, and if they happen to see it.
Okay. Questions from council before we open a public hearing?
James, I just want to go back to, you said you fixed the problem with real estate signs, and I guess I'm having some trouble understanding how it's been fixed. Wouldn't you agree that real estate signs are content-based?
Yeah. See, you can determine if a sign is off-premise. You can so because you're allowed to distinguish between off-premise and on-premise sign. You have to be able to read the content and decipher what the content is to be able to determine if it's off-premise and on-premise. Like I said, just because you have to read it does not mean it's content-based. If you read it so that you can determine if it's off-premise or on-premise, then it's that's totally that's not content-based. And so.
So what other commercial signs could be put in a person's yard for the whole year?
Commercial signs, a home, if it's a single-family or two-family house.
And theoretically, any commercial sign could be put in the yard for an indefinite period of time.
If it's on premise, if the business is taking place on that property.
Let's say a subcontractor does work. Could that sign, is that what you're driving at?
Yeah.
If there's-
Subcontractor remodels the kitchen.
No, that would be off-premise, because that's off-premise. The reason that real estate signs are on-premise is because the product that's being sold is the house, and so it's on the property, and so
Hold
it is.
on. Maybe I don't understand what the difference between on and off premises is.
Yeah.
The real estate sign is in the front yard, right? The contractor's sign is in the front yard.
Right.
So why are they different?
Because the contractor's business takes place somewhere else. The location of their office is not. The location of where the activity is not on the premises, whereas the
activity was the
Activity
remodeling
actually
that house.
And we would allow that, and
So the real estate agent has a business office somewhere over here, but the activity is on that property.
but
The
it,
contractor has a business over there, but he's doing work on this property.
And we're limiting that contractor, once the work is done, to 14 days following when it's observed and reported. And so
Okay.
we give notice, but that's different than
Okay,
the
that's
home
fine.
for sale.
Okay, thank you.
but real estate signs, they're on premise because you're selling the house.
And while the HVAC work is being done on the house, we're allowing that and saying for a period not less than 14 days after the completion of the work.
I guess you could interpret it to be on premise while they're doing work. I figure you can interpret it that way. But once they're done working, then it's off.
Right.
It comes off premise.
Right. And I think that's how we looked at it.
There's a hand up over here somewhere. Brian?
Still,
Okay, a couple comments. First of all, Jonathan brought up the 4x8 sign. I think we definitely need to change that for the 4x8 signs because they're all over the place. The other thing is you had an inflatable sign, if it's like a Bart Simpson or something.
Yeah.
Now, if there isn't an actual message on that, is it really a sign?
Yes, because it's there's a definition for a sign. It's portraying a mess. Well, let's see. Sign definition. This will tell you the sign definition. It's right here. Any device, structure, fixture, painting, emblem, or visual that uses words, graphics, colors, illumination, symbols that Bart Simpson would be a symbol, or letters for communicating a message. The sign includes the sign faces and yeah.
But I'm not seeing the message here. I'm seeing Bart Simpson. I don't even know what they're selling.
I would.
Is this a liquor store or what?
It's saying that we support Bart. We like Bart Simpson. I mean, I don't know, but that's definitely a message somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's trying to draw attention to the business, and that's the purpose, to draw them in, and that's permittable, but you're restricted to just one of those as a temporary signs, as opposed to 2 temporary signs if you're not using a large inflatable.
Yeah. I guess they're saying Bart Simpson drinks here, so you should too.
Jody?
So, have the business owners that were interested in the group that you talked to, have they had a chance to look at and review the final proposal here?
No, not the final. No, we took something. What we took to them was you get 2, and we're going to permit off-premise signage for a certain amount of time. They were okay with the types. All the types stayed the same, so none of that. All the types of temporary signage are the same. I don't think we got into the specifics of the. We did get into the specifics of the sandwich board signs, so they were okay with that. But we didn't get really into the specific. But the limitations on the height and area is very liberal. I don't think.
And we also met with them twice. And the first time we met with them, we had a draft of the full ordinance, and quite honestly spent probably 3 hours going through that. We then emailed them out the changes, and then when the next time we met, we just sort of met with a summary of what we tweaked. So we haven't sent them what came to P&Z and to City Council. We're happy to send that around to them, but it almost got, as you can see, just in trying to review it with us, you have to almost go through all of the sections to really have it profitable, and we didn't do it a third time with them.
And there were last-minute changes. So
that's correct.
Even if we gave it to them 3 weeks ago, there were changes last week.
Hold on, just make sure I understood that, what you just said. So 3 weeks ago, we gave them a copy of this?
No.
Probably 2 months ago.
In September, we gave them a copy of draft. I think it was draft 6.
Okay. And were they aware that tonight is a public hearing?
We just talked about the schedule of taking it to P&Z in December.
I don't see any of them here. And my other question then, were they at the P&Z meeting?
They weren't at the P&Z. We didn't email them. I probably should.
Okay, so maybe by virtue of tonight, they'll come to the next meeting.
Mayor, what I can tell you is I did speak with a few of them, and that the things that they were worried about are reflected in this, and they're pretty happy about it, including several very happy about your flower pot ordinance, and then of course the height restriction. Of course, some of them were a little upset at that, but once we explained to them, why that is and why you can't have it a certain way, they're really great about it.
Okay. Any questions before we open the public hearing? If not, let's officially open a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak for the record on these proposed changes to the ordinance? Please come forward. If not, we'll close the public hearing. Any further comments? David?
I just want to make a quick comment. We were downtown this morning for a small business proclamation for downtown, and I think the original thing that happened here is that the small businesses came to us and said, we're having trouble with the sign ordinances and we'd like to see something change. It sounds like planning and zoning is a little bit worried that we're going to end up with more signs from this. What I would say is if the small businesses in our town see this as something that we need to change and is positive for their business, I think we should try to be supportive because they came to us and we do care about our small businesses. So just in response to the planning and zoning, I think it's important just to mention the fact that a lot of small businesses see this as very important. So I appreciate all those who put time into making this happen and getting those folks together. And as a final thing, I think it would be great if we could at least let them know that we've talked about this and maybe they can come to the next meeting. Just so that they're aware. If there's a way to do that, I don't know.
Sure, we can email them final version for sure. And it was interesting to have the group because the group was just pulled together people who either spoke at the city council meeting or sent us an email with some suggestions on what they would like to see done, and that's who we invited in. They took the position to restrict signage as well. I mean, they did not want to open it up so that everybody could put up whatever they wanted, because there's some examples of 5 and 6 of the banners and that are in people's yards that people don't support commercially. And the committee was pretty good. I call it a committee. It was just an informal conversation, but they were pretty conscious about, we want to allow some temporary signage, don't overregulate it, but we don't want to have a proliferation that we take away the aesthetics. In fact, there was one member on the committee who came expressly because they didn't want to see more signs up, so we even had that view on this group. And again, for an informal group, I thought it was a really productive couple of meetings we had with them. But easy to send them the final version and say, hey, we had a public hearing, we're going to be considering this at the next meeting. If you'd like to add any comments, come to the meeting, you're welcome to do that.
Thanks for all your work.
You're welcome.
I want to just take a step back here. So the fact that P&Z turned this down means there's a higher threshold for council to pass it, correct? Or no?
You know, that's true
I
on
thought-
zoning changes. That's an interesting
Oh, no, that's
question.
just, zoning, I believe.
We'd have to check that as to whether a no vote requires a
So
supermajority of
remember,
council.
we even looked into it when it's zoning. There is no. It's just a recommending body.
Yeah,
Let's
we'll
just make-
verify that.
Let's just make sure of that. But I don't want to be dismissive. So by a 6-2 vote, they voted it down. So what else did P&Z see that we're not seeing?
Real estate didn't fix the signs.
Right.
The real estate signs weren't fixed at that time.
That didn't come up till after the vote.
Okay, so Matthew, you're one of the two?
Yes.
Or one of the six
I was one of the two, I voted in favor of this.
in favor of this? So, not that you want to speak on behalf of the other six, but what were some of the other reservations, or is this the only one?
I think the main reservation was there was a fear that this would lead to more signs in town, and there was the historical perspective of when this original ordinance was drafted, that prior to that there was all these junky signs around town, and it made Rolla look bad. So I think there was this general fear amongst those who had been around for a long time that this was going to take us a step backward, not a step forward.
Okay. Steve?
Are we going to have verbiage in there that regardless if a sign meets the size and the content and all that, that if it's in disrepair or if it's a blight of some sort, that we can ask to have that replaced?
It's in there. Yeah. If it's faded, in disrepair, there's a cause for that.
Okay.
It
Now,
also says-
there's a little discretion there, right? I mean,
Right, of course.
But
So,
some
but-
of those inflatable signs can get really bad. I mean, they when they get all faded, they can look really bad.
And my other question was, in regards to the 6-2 vote against,
Something to distinguish.
you said that there was some, the real estate thing was an issue. I understand the number of signs, that's not necessarily going to go down with this if I go up, but would those amendments that have taken place since that meeting, would that have swung that to in favor? Or, I guess my
That's hard
question
to
is,
say.
are we still sitting at a 6-2 in against vote, or do you think with the changes that have made since,
I can't.
that we're in fact no longer there?
I can't really say. It's hard to say.
I think it would still be 6-2 against, and the reason being the real estate issue didn't come up till after the vote,
Okay.
as I recall. So it wouldn't have, that had no impact on people's decision making at all because nobody brought it up till after the fact.
So this is really just more about the sheer number of signs.
That was the impression I got, and the enforcement mechanism. They did not like, there was a couple members of the council or the commission that did not like the fact that we weren't funding, this was like an unfunded mandate. We're going to make this law, but we're not going to give the resources to fund it. We're relying on the citizens of this town to make the complaints, to do it.
Thanks.
And the reason I call those three reasons out is because I specifically asked them, what are the specific reasons? And those were the three ones that they gave.
Sure.
But there were also multiple comments on the aesthetics, the aesthetic issue of
Sure.
increasing.
I just wanted to clarify for anyone who's going to report on this, if, based on those additional three things, are we really still at that type of vote or not? But I think based on that, it's probably still there just because of their main issue is not necessarily reflected in those things.
Perhaps. We definitely took care of the real estate issue, though. That's totally taken care of.
And something the mayor and I were just whispering a little bit about is this ordinance allows 2 temporary signs. When we met with the committee, we talked about just allowing 1, and we talked about allowing 4. So we ended up at 2. If it was 1, that might be something that P&Z is more supportive of. I don't know that, but the committee felt, and we think 2 seems reasonable with what we saw that was out there, right? When you see 5 or 6, it looks excessive. 2 doesn't stand out. And if the 2 is an open and a sale, that doesn't seem unreasonable to us.
2 per tenant space.
2 per tenant space.
And anything that's Anything that's about 100 feet in is exempt also. So,
Right.
So if you have a large lot, you could have a bunch of temporary signs at your door because you can't see them from the right of way, so it's not going to affect aesthetics or safe traffic safety.
Jimmy Dale?
At the hearing, when they were here, all those people that were talking about it, they were all sincere about doing things in good taste. That's what I received from most of the people that were here. I don't think we're going to know anything until we have a trial period down the road to see how this is going to go. I mean, we're going to have to give it some time. It may increase the signs, but I don't think it's going to increase the signs to the perception that a lot of people think it's going to. These people out here are sincere about their business. They're going to do it in quality taste, and I think we can just wait and see what happens. And if we do, we can bring it back up and have a meeting with them again.
If this ordinance passed as it is, have you thought about how many locations around town are not in compliance?
Oh,
So if you went to inspect tomorrow, based on this new ordinance, is there 50, is there 100, or is there 2? I mean, how big of a change is this
Dozens.
vis-a-vis as to what we have now?
I would say between 50
A lot.
and 100.
A lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Because
this is-
the old ordinance basically didn't allow.
Okay, so the day this passes, we're going to have people upset with us.
Well, and we haven't thought this through, but we could put an effective date of, let's say, January 1 or February 1, because we do need to give a time to get the word out there and make sure we got some material. We can't send this ordinance, right? We got to send some material that's going to be readily available and readable.
Actually, in the non-conforming sign area, it says you have 60 days to get rid of your temporary signs.
But we need to somehow roll that out through a campaign of
Oh, yeah.
newsletters and social media blasts and
Try to-
Chamber of Commerce, that kind of thing. So we'll need a period of time to do that.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, first reading, please.
An ordinance amending Article 3 of Chapter 42, which is known as the Rolla Planning and Zoning Code, by deleting and adding language to Division 18 of said article, which is known as signs, for the particular purpose of permitting temporary and portable signage. Sign ordinance.
Just a suggestion before we leave that one, do we want to make a motion, or I'll just leave it to council if they want to make a motion to change the square footage on the residential signage?
I would like to see that amended to accommodate 4x8 signs, so I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Moving on to special presentations, we have 3. First one is Mr. Jonathan All from St. Louis Public Radio.
Thank you very much to the council and city staff for asking me to speak. I met our city administrator at the Chamber of Commerce luncheon last week, and he suggested I introduce myself. My name is Jonathan All. I'm the new Rolla Bureau reporter for St. Louis Public Radio. That means I'm living and working in Rolla for St. Louis Public Radio, reporting on the region for the entire St. Louis Public Radio network that includes KMST here in Rolla, KWMU in St. Louis, and WQUB in Quincy, Illinois. So I'm really looking forward to continuing to learn a lot about the community and to do a good job of making sure that people outside of Rolla and Phelps County and the surrounding area understands a lot of the things that are going on here. I've already had a lot of great opportunities to meet with people and organizations in town, and I'm really looking forward to that continuing as time goes on. So if you have anything that you would like us to consider doing a story on that you think is something that's unique and special that's going on here that you'd like the rest of the region to know about, I'd be happy to talk with you and make sure that those stories are being told elsewhere. And I'd just also like to mention that the Rolla Bureau does not have a sign, but if we do, we will follow the new ordinance. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Jonathan, how about community notices? Does, KMST had the
Sure.
opportunity to do notices of events that we had going on?
Unfortunately, that's going to be rather limited. The litmus test is going to be anything that I do will go out for all of St. Louis Public Radio. So is it of interest not only to someone in Rolla, but also someone who lives in North County, St. Louis, O'Fallon, Illinois, Quincy, Illinois. It's got to be something that is of regional focus. So for example, a couple of things that I've done so far, S&T was doing a new battery research in their solar village, did a story on that. I did a story on the Rock Island Trail. We also did a story on the weather and how it'll affect agriculture in Missouri coming up this winter. So it's really regional stories. So I completely understand the value of having really local media. Unfortunately, with the new setup that we have, that's not going to be something that we're going to be able to do the way that it was able to have been done when KMST was a standalone state.
I think of an event like Celebration of Nations that the university and the community puts together, and it's really an incredible regional event. I just didn't know if that would be newsworthy in St. Louis, but maybe not.
It could be, and I think you know, part of my job is, and I'm a journalist first, but I still want Rolla's story to be told. So when there are ideas, I can help say, well, what's new, what's interesting, what's different? How can we shape this so that it's got legs that is of interest beyond just here to the greater region? So, you know, I have to play that kind of dual role of being an advocate, but also being the filter of journalism and what is of interest to a very large listening area now.
Could we ask where your office location will be?
I am in the basement of the library at S&T in the old, in the like back 2 rooms of the old KMST. If you can find me, without a Sherpa, you've done very well. So, but yes, the office is in Rolla. I live in Rolla. This is a Rolla job, and I'm really, really excited to be here and very happy to be part of the community.
What are the station numbers?
88.5 here in Rolla, 90.7 in St. Louis, and 90.3 in Quincy. And there's also a repeater in Lebanon that I am embarrassed to say that I don't know off the top of my head.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next presentation is the quarterly report from Sandra Laurie from the Rolla Regional Economic Commission.
Good evening. I would like to go over a few things for you tonight and bring you up to date, and also for the benefit of several of you who are relatively new now on the council. I want to give you a little bit of information to kind of bring you up to speed on what the RREC does and how it works, basically. So the first thing I want to talk about and explain to you are how leads are generated for economic development projects, for industrial development projects. The old idea of just knocking on doors is pretty outdated, and that individual marketing is really kind of like trying to find the needle in the haystack, and just isn't very effective, as well as it's very expensive, especially for small communities. Attending and taking part in trade shows can anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000, and when you do, you tend to always end up kind of talking to salespeople, and they're not really the ones you need to talk to find out about the company's future. So, and also then paying for media, which is very expensive, as far as newspaper advertising, radio advertising. You get lost in the shuffle. It's very expensive, and so that's not as effective as we'd like to have it. So the most effective way for us to try to bring new industrial companies into the Rolla-Phelps County area is to utilize what's called the Missouri Partnership, and that is the state's marketing arm, and as well as recruitment. And they are paid for through the state of Missouri, as well as, really it's funded very much the way that we are here. It's paid partly by the state and then also by funding partners through the Hawthorne Foundation. So at the state level, the first challenge is just to get a company to look at the state of Missouri, and they do a lot of events targeting companies, but also consultants and brokers, because most companies, or a good large number of companies, really go through basically like a real estate consultant, but they are experts in trying to help a company relocate. And they do events across the all throughout the year, which we were able to partner with by paying a fee to take part of the events, to be able to get in and talk with some of the consultants, and not only talk about Missouri, but then we have a chance to talk a little bit about Rolla. So recently I was able to take part in one of these, partner with them on a trip to Toronto, where we were able to make contact with not only a few site consultants, but also financial people, legal folks that companies often use, especially in Canada. They tend to use more of those type of resources for finding locations. And so made some really great contacts with them. And matter of fact, we're working to come up with some other marketing strategy to utilize those contacts. So once the Missouri Partnership, or MOPAR, finds out what the company is looking for, then and at that time the company may be looking in one of several states. Then again, based upon the company's needs, they decide where to send out the information about this project lead. It may go statewide. It may go just in certain metropolitan areas. They may even specify certain parts of the state, like down in the Buto where there's a lot of rice production or that type of thing. And again, it's due to their suppliers, their customers, transportation, all of those kind of things go into making their decision on where they need to put a new facility. And more than ever, the availability of workforce has come into the picture, where there's a large enough labor pool to support hiring the number of people they need to initially start up, and also to continue whenever there's turnover. So again, telling you about how the process continues, they send out this request for information, an RFI, and then the community responds back if they have something that fits that request. And along that, at that time, they'll sometimes give a little bit of a general idea of their availability of incentives. As their partnership then, from across the state, region, whatever the area they've designated, will pick the top 5, 10, or maybe all of them, depending on what the consultants want to look at, and submit those. Then that consultant or company then picks through those and decides who they want to look at, or they may ask for more information. And they'll come back, ask for more information, you submit it again, then maybe you'll get a site visit. And then many times you go through that same process a couple more times, more information, maybe they'll come back, and visit again. So that's it's kind of a funneling down effect. It's more of a deselection than it is a selection process, because we're trying to get rid of the places that that doesn't fit. You'll find this interesting, and you want to take a look at it when you have a little bit more time. But that's fine. Did we miss this page here? Yeah. So again, the general location is based on the company's needs. And again, number one on the list now more than ever is that likely labor pool. It's location, location, location. Where's the workforce? Where's the skilled labor? And where's the talent? Then it comes then after the labor pool, then it's is there a building or site available for me? Because it doesn't do any good to have the labor pool or to have the other requirements if you don't have a available building or site to start with. And then how does that meet the company's specific needs? And it's a weighted decision-making process. And that's what I wanted to show you here that you might want to take a look at. This is a form that was used by the company that helped, that worked with Hartman. And it's not often we get to see this as far as how that is weighted and how they look at what they're looking for. But Jerry, who was the vice president, shared this during a presentation, and you might take a look at it and how it's broken down into what is most important, and of those things, what is most important within those segments. Now, you might notice there, as I was saying labor is so important, remember that this was back in 2015 when the unemployment rate in the state of Missouri was at 6.1%. It is now down to 2.6%. So you can see why it wasn't as important then as it is today. So what does that mean to the Rolla area? First of all, I need you to realize that there's not as many new companies locating in Missouri or in any state, for that matter, as one might think. We talk to people, sometimes they think that there's a new company opening up, once every month in every little community. But, and also to realize that the metropolitan areas really have the advantage, and it goes back to that labor pool. What I've given you here is some slides from a presentation made by Missouri Partnership, and you see that in 2017 there were only 21 successful projects throughout the entire state, and that little diagram gives you a good indication of where those projects went. Then in 2018 there were only 18 successful projects. So you can see why it's not something that happens just every day in the economic development in industry. So what are Rolla's challenges? And that's what I want to kind of go into more about what we're doing now. I keep harping back about labor pool, and I do so because it's so very important. You can see there that St. Louis Community College in a 2018 report, just in the Midwest, there are 20% more job openings than there are job seekers, and the St. Louis region had over 45,000 open positions. 45,000 open positions in the month of July. So how does Rolla stack up to when you're looking at the labor pool? We did in 2015 a labor basin study which goes out and looks at, end result tells you how many people are underemployed and how many will move for a job, and a lot of other statistics, which I'd be happy to send you the report. But it starts out telling you that the 11 county area that a company in Rolla could expect to draw from, there's a population of only 318,000 people, of which only 75,000 are the available labor pool, which means there's only 75,000 people that are in that age group that would qualify as a labor pool. So that's one of our challenges. Then talking about, when I said the second thing that they had to look at is, well, is there a building or is there a site? So far this year, we've had 18 requests for information, which is when they send out the RFI and ask, do you have this or do you have that? And of those 18, 12 of them were asking for buildings. And this is something that's been new, I've not seen before. 5 of them were asking for existing operations, like a particular type of plant or a dairy operation, that type of thing. So basically, and then only 3 asked for a greenfield site. This doesn't add up exactly because there were a couple of them that said either or. 3 asked for a greenfield site, in essence, a place that they could have a building built. Of those projects, 4 of them required that they be rail served. So ultimately, we were only able to submit on 4 of those requests. Our inventory, as I've said in the past, thanks to the Hartman coming and the several other things happening to fill some of the empty buildings, we have one 47,000 square foot building that is suitable for warehouse or distribution. It could become light manufacturing, but take a little bit of investment. We have 2 or 3 small developed sites in the expanded High Point area. We have the airport acreage, although it's quite a ways from I-44. And then there are sort of other underdeveloped sites and nothing over 60 acres.
Sorry, so is the 47,000 square foot building, is that Cantex?
No, it's the FedEx, the former FedEx building.
Okay.
The Cantex building is not on the market.
It's not on the market? Okay.
So, all this gloom and doom. So what are we going to do? Well, we can stand around and just wring our hands, or we can try to come up with a plan of action. So our work plan for this year, we're focusing in on certainly continue a focused marketing strategy with Missouri Partnership. Just because we have fewer doesn't mean we can't hopefully fill those spots, so we'll continue that marketing strategy. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to utilize the Canadian connections that we made just last in October. And matter of fact, we're collaborating with the 2 other communities that went along on that. And then we will start focusing more strongly on retaining and growing our existing companies, which is where most job growth comes from, really, anyway, and continuing to build relationships to address any problems they may have that would maybe keep them from putting expansions there, or, God forbid, leave and go somewhere else. And then we're adding a workforce awareness component to our REC, and we'll be coming to you and telling you more about that in the future. As a matter of fact, later in this evening, we're going to ask that you approve one of your seats on our board for a new board member who is a professional in the workforce development area. And we're also collaborating with the Chamber to promote some quality of life as a component of retaining and attracting labor pool. We're looking at some videos, some social media marketing to help police-wise, companies when they're trying to attract people, a labor pool here, or people looking for a place to live, that there's some information out there for them to see what an attractive place we are. So wrapping that up, I have just 2 other things I want to mention to you this evening. I wanted to tell you I have made an announcement to my board that I will be retiring at the end of 2019, and so we'll be working towards that. There'll be some things that we'll be doing about the middle of the year that I'll be doing to help to try to find the next person. And then the last thing is I handed you all out invitations, and I certainly hope that you'll be able to join us on the 14th of December for our annual meeting. We try to change things up and sometimes have breakfast meetings, sometimes evenings, and that type of thing. This will be a breakfast sponsored by Belton County Bank from 7:30 to 9 at the Oak Meadow Country Club. And the Garrison Commander from over Fort Leonard Wood is going to talk about the impact of Fort Leonard Wood on the region's economy. And so there's my email address. If you get a chance, please send me an RSVP so I'll know how many donuts to buy. So, and with that, any questions?
Jimmy Dale?
Jimmy?
Senator, how was there any effect in the fact that the right to work law did not pass? Did that?
It's been such a short time since that happened. I've not heard too much yet on what we feel the impact has been. Generally, in the past, what we've always felt is it's hard to count because you can't count what you don't see. And those site consultants and those companies that we talk about, we can't count them if they never even come to and give us a chance. And they oftentimes start out with the requirements, I want a right to work state. So
there's rumors out there that it did hurt the state pretty bad.
Well, yes, because but we can't. It's hard to quantify that, is what I'm trying to say, because you don't know how many companies aren't going to look at you as a result of it.
I think somebody ought to take a look at it because it did hurt.
Oh, yes, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, thank you very much.
All right, let me end it with go Chiefs. Bye now.
Rolla Municipal Utilities Quarterly Report. Rodney.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try and move through this, and I'll second what Senator said, go Chiefs. All right, let me see if I can find the presentation on here. There we go. Thank you. I hope you can see it on your screens, I hope. Again, we do this once a quarter. This is the end of our fiscal year, so this is kind of a wrap-up of our end of our year. The full quarterly report is out on our website, and we can go look at that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I've got kind of a end-of-the-year wrap-up kind of at the end of this presentation I'm gonna cover. I will go over the financials a little bit for you. This was financially a very good year for RMU, despite doing all the rate relief we were doing. So this is our net income, our operating income. This is not our bottom line of the budget, but it kind of gives you an idea of how we did. We had a couple things improving the financials. If you just go to the bottom line and look at our net income, we're up almost $2 million over last year. And that's, again, giving back $1.5 million back to our ratepayers and rate relief. A couple things contributed to that. One is the Board of Public Works made a decision somewhat early in the year to pay off a lease purchase that we had. Oh, no. Wow, that's... There it goes. Okay, sorry. I didn't realize that wasn't scrolled. So we're 1.9 million to the good compared to the previous year. Again, the board made the decision early in the year to pay off a lease purchase we had on our transmission and our substation assets. When we did that, that freed up about $1 million annually in income, or income to us, because we're not paying on that debt service. So that freed up some money. The other thing is we changed the way we book assets, especially water main assets that are donated to the city as new developments happen. And so we didn't have much activity last year, but we booked about $700,000 worth of new water mains that show up as an income for us, but it's non-cash income. So it's in here, but it's not really income, but it makes it look better than maybe what it is. And then the other thing was
Rodney, can you explain that again? I didn't quite understand that.
So when a new development goes in, let's say the St. Maria's, which you're going to talk about in a little bit, the developer installs the water main system and then donates that to RMU for us to maintain in perpetuity after that. We have to book that as an asset. It's considered an income that we have and we put on our books, but it's non-cash. We didn't pay anything for it, but we received a value, so we book that as an asset. That shows up as an income in our position statement.
Okay.
So. Then we put it on our books, depreciate it, and so we can plan for replacements and those kinds of things a long time, some period of time from now. The other thing is winter was very cold. Last winter was very cold, and our sales were up considerably. Not just in Rolla, but our pool wide, our sales were up, and the amount of power that we sold was up. So that also contributed to our bottom line. After that, I'm going to move down. I just want to talk about just one of the miscellaneous items. We reported this to the board at our last meeting, but toward the end of October, we've had over 30 metered customers signed up for our community solar program. So that with 1 month in, we thought we were doing fairly well with that program. Customers took the ones that have subscribed. It's taken anywhere between 1 and 15 blocks, which each block is 100 kilowatt hours of usage. Average has been a little over 4 blocks of power used, and so it's a little bit of a movement, but that is about 156,000 kilowatt hours annually, which is only about 5% of our allocation. So we got a lot of room to grow that program, and we hope that that program will grow over the coming months as more people get aware of it, see the signs. Yes, sir.
I was curious, how many total blocks do you have of that of the 100 kilowatts per block?
So So what we sold so far, and I don't have that number.
Oh, the actual total you can sell is what I'm
But pretty much, I'll put it this way. Rolla, of the 35 cities in our pool, Rolla is the only one that's initiated this program. Any of the cities can. We're the only one that's done it. If for some reason, we have about 12% of the allocation of the solar resources, but if the other resources don't get used by the other cities, it gives us an opportunity to bring more. But so we've got a lot.
A lot of possibility. Okay.
A lot. That a long ways to grow in this program.
Rodney, the solar is a premium if you want it.
Yes.
Wind is not part of it. Is that because wind is cheaper than coal?
Pretty much. I'll talk about it in my year wrap-up, but most of our wind resources we have allocated to our large commercial customers through a different program we started about 2 years ago, and locally Brewer Science and MS&T are using that program, and pretty much we have subscribed all the RECs and the wind energy that we have on the books. And this was another way we could leverage our solar resources. As we add more wind...
Yeah, but certain people got the benefit of the cheaper wind, but residents can only participate.
Right. Well, and again, it had to do on the wind power, because of the nature of the wind. We wanted that to go to high load factor businesses. Basically, Walmart in town didn't qualify for that wind power because we're looking and targeting it to very specific customers that had very specific load factors that could use a lot of that wind power at night, especially when we're generating it. Okay. So with that, I'm going to move in. Any questions? Like I said, happy to answer any questions. If you looked at the report, happy to answer any questions in any there. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of talk about some 2018 highlights. The biggest one, we are financially sound, healthy. We're operating very well. Our net position, that is actual money in the bank. We're down $7.25 million compared to last year. That's because we paid the lease purchase off. That significantly dropped our assets down. That was a good long discussions about how we would go through that. We feel we're comfortable with where that's at, although we know we're going to grow that back up considerably back over the next couple of years as the Ameren project moves forward. But if we ever would have an ice storm, major event, we do have borrowing ability, which we would do if we run in trouble, but we think we're adequately covered for the short period of time that we're going to be down. We did provide, we had budgeted $1.4 million in rate relief in our 2018 fiscal year. We actually gave back $1.5 million. Again, because we had higher kilowatt hour sales, it's a 6% discount on all the sales, so we gave back additional money back to the customers, especially in those bigger winter months when we had higher bills. That rate relief, the good news is that rate relief will continue in fiscal year 2019. And if you read the board meeting minutes, certainly the board is interested in possibly, because of the lease purchase, paying that off, having that debt reduction down, looking at maybe even making these power cost adjustments for certainly maybe making those permanent. So, and actually showing that as our rates actually going down, and not just doing a discount on the rates. So we'll be doing that as we review our budget next year. Our electric and water reserves are I say they're fully funded. Our water reserves are fully funded. The electric, we're in pretty good shape, but we'll refund those going forward. Our loggers retirement program, is 112% funded, so we're very well overfunded. Loggers as an organization is very well run. They're about 95 or 96 pre-funded. So the loggers organization, it's a very healthy retirement system that we use. Unlike some of the other retirements, when you hear horror stories about some of the other pension plans. Power supply costs are projected to be stable. We're doing very well there. Again, the Grain Belt Express project, I think if that keeps moving and goes forward, that will possibly even reduce our rates on wholesale costs in the next few years. The MOPAP commercial operation of 11 solar farms we have in our portfolio now, all same size as what we have here in Rolla. Again, going back to the question on wind power, that renewable energy was very successful. We oversubscribed it in 2017 as a pool. Initially here, Brewer Science and MS&T participated. After we finished the first year of commercial operation of the wind farm in Marshall County, Kansas, we realized additional wind power was generated at that site. So we went back to the existing customers that were in that, reallocated that power if they wanted to. And right now, Brewer Science is almost receiving 100% of their energy from that wind resource, and MS&T is about 80% using the wind resources.
Ronnie, hold on.
I just had a question since we're on wind. Does the Greenbelt Express, does that have to do with the wind?
Yes.
And that's the Supreme Court case of letting it come through or
Coming through, yeah, and I'll talk, I think I'm going to hit that here in a little bit.
Great.
Oh, there it is right there. So positive, I'll back up. So a positive MOPAP outlook for Western Kansas Wind is a replacement power resource in 2022. So again, that is a project. The Greenbelt Express is a transmission line, high voltage DC transmission line, taking wind power from Western Kansas where it's generated. And the initial plan was to take it all the way to Indiana, dump it into the PJM RTO, which is the regional transmission organization out on the East Coast. Missouri PSC, I think, maybe rightfully so, denied their application to be a utility in Missouri several years ago, and that opened up an opportunity for the municipal utilities in the state to negotiate an off-ramp in Missouri where we could be a taker of that wind power. Our goal here, if it still needs to go back to the Public Service Commission for approval in Missouri. They need to renew their permit in Kansas. They've got a small bug they got to fix in Illinois with their certificate of need there. If they can get that all cleaned up and start constructing, we're hoping that that power will be available in about 2022 now. There's about a year delay because of the litigation that's gone on over that project. But our plan is, if that all continues to go through, we'll be taking wind power from Western Kansas into our portfolio and some natural gas resources that we've already committed for in Western Missouri, and taking that power and replacing a coal contract that we have out of Illinois, getting coal power out of Illinois. So on the whole, it's environmentally friendly, but on the bigger thing, it could save our power pool about $10 million. And if it saves our power pool $10 million, as I said, we're about 10% of that. It could save Rolla $1 million annually. So that's kind of some of the projections, but a lot of things have to go right for that all to happen. So I'll keep everyone on the board and yourselves updated as that project moves along. I mentioned water meter replacement. That replacement testing program is well underway. We're about over 80% complete in changing out our small meters. Still have some 1-inch meters and some 2-inch meters to go, but we're moving along very well in that program of replacing meters and then also testing our large meters. We had a meeting with Senator Brown, Senator-elect Brown and Representative Mayhew. We talked a little bit about, they met with the TDED board, but we did talk about what's going on Kings Highway and some of the redevelopment projects. And I can report that the first few spans of overhead lines on Kings Highway from Tater Patch to Lucky House are no longer in existence. That's kind of stage one of a multi-year program to eliminate the overhead lines there and move them back either on the new Highway 72 extension or back behind the building fronts on Kings Highway. Single-family housing still appears to be on an increase, and then good major construction projects like the West Side Marketplace, redevelopment of Kmart, they add load to our system, and that's a good thing for us and a good thing for our consumers as we spread out those sales against and makes us a little bit more efficient. And then we finalize, I think the last thing I have is we did finalize the sale of the transmission assets to AXTI, that's the Amherst transmission arm out of Illinois. We did receive very good value for those assets. It eliminates our long-term debt on those assets. Plus, it paid us to continue to own and operate our substation. So it's a win, very much a win-win for us. It's a good project for Ameren, good project for the co-op system around us. I got word late last week that all the regulatory approvals are on track. Public Service Commission here in the state is going very well. They've canceled the hearings because everyone has agreed to what Amherst proposed, and it looks like that's going to go pretty smooth here in the state. And then the FERC, there's no real opposition to it on the FERC or the federal level either. So we think, Ameren thinks that we're on track for maybe getting all those approvals by the end of the year, which is ahead of schedule from where they thought they'd be. And again, the estimated project completion is late 2020, where we would actually close on the sale of the assets. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Everybody likes money, getting money back, Rodney, so no questions.
Hey, Rodney,
That's a good
one question on the
Yes.
80% change out of the small water meters. Are you seeing an increase in that flow and the volume being recorded? or what's
I
the-
think it's still a little too early to see. I think when we get everything complete, then we can kind of look at have we improved our revenue numbers. And again, we projected about a 6% improvement in our revenues, also 6% in sewer revenues for the city, and the payback made sense with the partnership doing that joint project.
Great.
All right. Thank you very much. Anything
Thank you,
else?
Rodney.
Thank you very much.
That ends the special presentations. Moving on to old business, we have one item, and that's an ordinance approving the final plat of St. Maria's to Tandra. James?
Thank you. We've talked about this case many times, so just gonna talk about what has changed. So as you can see, it's a 58 lot subdivision of 1 to 4 family units. This is where we're at in the process, right here. And so one of the things that must be done before the city council can approve the proposal is that the final development plans have to be approved, and those were approved by RMU and Public Works as mandated in the code. All this we went over last time. Oops. Okay. So at the P&Z Commission, there were some people that spoke at the public hearing. We've already talked about that. Nobody spoke at the last hearing. By a 3-8 vote, the majority of the city council voted to approve the preliminary plat of St. Maria's to Tandra. And the action requested from the city council is to conduct the final reading of an ordinance that would approve the final plat of St. Maria's to Tandra. And that's it. If anybody has any questions.
If there's no questions from council, final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve the final plat of St. Maria's to Tandra, which is a major subdivision plat that divides an approximately 42-acre tract of land that is identified by the Phelps County Assessor's account number of 12081 into 58 lots and 5 outlots.
Move proposed ordinance passed.
Second.
Motion made and second. Roll call vote, please.
Crow,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Hines,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Everly,
Yes.
Woolley,
Yes.
12 ayes.
Ordinance is approved. Moving on to new business. First item is an ordinance consolidating Lot 2, 3, and part of 6 in the Newman's Division.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Anyways, the property is located in central Rolla at the southeast, on the southeast side of Olive Street and Rhodes Avenue. It's, sorry, this isn't working properly, but the applicant is the Brandon, Jessica, Michael, and Mary Thonis. The agent and the surveyor is Sylvester First. The 2 subject parcels constitute 2 subdivided lots and a fraction of another 2 deeded lots. So as you can see that. There's a part of 1 lot here, so you have 2 deeded lots, this one and this one, but you also have another one. So technically it's a consolidation, but really the deeded parcels are only 2, so you're really just, if you think about it, it's just a reconsolidation. And what they want to do is this is what it looks like now, and this is what it looks like after. What they want to do is flip this line around so that they can sell off this house. On both of these lots, as you can see on this next slide, the existing structures, there's 1 single family house right here, and 1 structure that was used as a church and is no longer being used as a church. And then you have 2 lots. Both of them do not meet minimum lot width or minimum lot size for the R3 district, which they are both within. The R3 has minimum lot width of 75 feet and 7,500 square feet for the minimum lot size. So the existing non-conforming status is 2 undersized lots that do not meet minimum lot width. And the non-conforming status of lots after the proposal would be 2 undersized lots that do not meet minimum lot width. So the result is no net change in the number of undersized with deficient lots. That's about it. So unanimously, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended the approval of the applicant's proposal, and the actions required from the City Council is to conduct the first reading of an ordinance that would approve the final plat of the Thonis addition.
James, we have a non-conforming lot, and we're going to take an action and still be non-conforming. That's allowed? I mean, I would have thought that once you make a change, you have to put it towards conforming status.
It doesn't explicitly say if it's not allowed. It says that you must conform to the zoning and planning code.
But in
I
this
would say
case,
that
it's not.
since you're not creating a there are a lot of provisions that actually talk about, that actually explicitly talk about lot reconfigurations and lot consolidations. And the provisions say as long as you don't create a new non-conforming lot, you can reconfigure lines. So as long as you don't make additional non-conforming lots, but that's how it is in other codes. But we don't have those provisions. But still, it says that you must conform to the Planning and Zoning Code, and I don't see that we're not creating any new non-conforming lots. So I'm interpreting that to mean that
Let's say hypothetically down the road, lot 1 or lot 2, which I assume is the south side of those properties, the undeveloped portion, would somebody be able to then re-subdivide and put something on lot 1 and 2, on the undeveloped part of 1 and 2?
So put this line and then re-subdivide it and then put something on the south side? Oh, no, you can't. No. You can't create a lot, a new lot. This is a reconfiguration. You cannot create a lot that doesn't meet minimum lot width and size.
So that undeveloped portion, under the proposal, the undeveloped portion of both of those will stay undeveloped?
Yes.
Unless they take the house down
Right.
and build something new?
Right.
Okay.
Whereas now, they could, if somebody got a variance, you could actually build on this. And that would actually be, so you're actually limiting the possibility of future, of an increase of density by putting the line this way. Because right now the site intensity for this lot is very high. And you could also, if they got a variance, put more density on here, up to, well, I've seen them give variances for 4 lots on a lot this same size.
Counselor, you're squirming in your seat here.
My question for you is there any way without taking down one or both of those buildings that 2 lots would become conforming? Is it because of how close they are?
No, there's no way the lots can become conforming.
Okay.
No.
So with those structures on there, they cannot become conforming?
Regardless of whether they're structures or not, it's the lots themselves just don't meet minimum lot width or lot width or size. We tried to figure out some way to make them, to get it so that they at least meet the minimum lot width, but we couldn't do that because this is only 106 feet. There's just not enough there to get them both to 75. And if there was, if there was a lot reconfiguration section of our code, almost all of them have that provision. If you don't create a new lot, if a new non-conforming lot, you can do a lot reconfiguration, as long as you don't create any new non-conforming lots.
Thank you. Any other questions from council?
How are these being used? Are these houses, or what are these?
This is a single-family house that's currently, there's somebody occupying it. This is a vacant church that they want to turn into a duplex. It's currently not being used as a church. we've determined that because it's a change of use, that they're going to have to get a variance for minimum lot width and minimum lot width and size to put in that duplex, because while we do have that provision for single family and two family houses to not have to go to the variance board, to not have to go to a variance board when they're sitting on a non-conforming lot, that's only for single family and duplex single family and duplexes that existed before.
So I guess where my question is going in this picture here, there's a van or something parked in the middle of the lot. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is going to be multifamily, are we going to require them to follow the same guidelines we would have any other with, what is it, 0.66 parking spots per bedroom or whatever? I forget what we ended up on, but
yeah.
Are we going to require them to put those facilities in with this new lot line? Because I think that that's something that we want to do, especially if we know that it's going to be used in that way.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't. All right. If you're finished, they turned in a site plan. We did require them so that we can do a land use review, and so they do show 2 parking spaces, which would be 4 parking spaces, because there's going to be 2 bedrooms in each unit. It's a minimum of 2 if you have 2 bedrooms or more, and then if anything over 2 bedrooms, it goes to the 0.06, which actually incentivizes more bedrooms. Yeah, so they already show it on their parking plan to have pull in here and have parking there, 4 spaces. This parcel, Councilman Crawl asked last time that how would they do parking if they needed to do parking, and they would just come down the alley. But they would never be required to do parking unless they rebuilt their house, which they are permitted to do without going to the variance board as long as they have the same footprint with the new non-conforming structure code.
Any other questions? If not, can we have the first reading?
An ordinance to consolidate lots 2, 3, and part of 6 of Block 5 of Newman's Addition, which together currently constitute 2 deeded parcels that are identified by their Phelps County Assessor account numbers of 8200 and 8199, and by the addresses of 300/302 Rhodes Avenue and 203 South Olive Street into 2 lots.
Next item is a resolution authorizing me to enter into 2 agreements with the South Central Drug Task Force. Chief?
Good evening. I am coming forward this evening with 2 items. The first one is to allow the city of Rolla to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the South Central Drug Task Force. We currently have 2 officers assigned to the task force. And in going through past paperwork, we've noticed that we've never really had a memorandum of understanding to have our officers there, so we decided it was probably time to do one. The second one that I'm asking for is for the city of Rolla, specifically the police department, to enter as the fiduciary responsibility for the South Central Drug Task Force, specifically in handling their drug seizure money and in distributing their drug seizure money. We have to do this because the federal government has determined that task forces are no longer allowed to handle their own drug seizure money. Since they are a multi-jurisdictional unit, it has to be done through a city. And since Rolla already had a seizure fund, we just transferred that money into our fund. And when the task force needs the money, they will contact us. We will make sure that it's a legal expenditure, and the city of Rolla will issue the money to them for the specific purpose.
Chief, I meant to ask the last time, where is that balance and flow of monies reported?
It is reported.
It's not on the city's books because it's not our money.
No, sir.
So
well,
it will
be on our books as soon as we start taking it.
It will be on.
But it will be partitioned because we still have a substantial amount of seizure money of our own. So it'll be partitioned as to what's Rolla's and what's the South Central Drug Task Force's money.
But only ours will be reported on our books.
No, because all the money's going to be our responsibility now.
So it'll be reported on our books, but it will be under South Central Drug Task Forces.
And there'll also be restricted funds.
Okay,
So they won't fall into an unrestricted account.
So one or the other, will it show up in a budget document?
Yeah, is the revenue, is it deposited there and is an asset on the
Okay, and
audit?
then one or both will show up in an audit as well?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Chief, if we're going to be handling their money, do you have any idea how much extra work this is going to cause the department?
Well, we're not actually handing them their money. They have operating funds of their own that federal government allows them to use. It's actually run through the Missouri State Highway Patrol. It's just seizure money. Seizure money can only be used for very specific items such as training and equipment. And they use that usually mostly for equipment and things like to pay the rent on their...
I guess what I'm asking is, if we're going to be overseeing this money, how much effort is that going to take on our part?
It really doesn't take that much. They said that on the average they pay probably 2 or 3 bills a month out of their seizure money. I mean, we've worked this out with them now. As the city itself, we get 1.5% of any of their seizure money for doing this for them. And currently, they have about a little over $1 million of seizure money coming in. So, I mean, for a little amount of work that it's going to cost, we're going to get.
So the 1.5% will more than cover our costs?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
If there's no other questions, can we have the reading of the first resolution? Yes.
Mayor, both items are listed on the one resolution.
It's just one action?
Yeah.
Thank you.
A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri a certain agreement and fiduciary agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and the South Central Drug Task Force.
Move resolution pass.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next item is a motion approving the annexation of property located in the Shady Oaks District.
We've been approached by a property owner out on County Road 5030. And if I get the overhead to work, we can show you where that is. The owner has approached the Shady Oaks Sewer District about annexing into that district. They're presently not in the district. The chairman of the district is agreeable, as is the county commission. We've had discussions with some of the commissioners. The way the annexation takes place is the county commission passes a resolution. Here's the red line indicates the boundaries of the Shady Oaks Sewer District now. This green area is the portion that's being proposed to be annexed. It's about 1,000 feet away from our existing facility that they would connect to.
Steve, can you clarify something?
Yeah.
Your write-up talks about an annexation into the sewer district.
Correct.
I don't want to assume, does that mean annexation into the city as well?
Oh, no, just the district. I guess what I'm kind of acting as today is the sewer engineer for the district. I would approach the commission and they would pass a resolution that would annex this property in. And I guess from that standpoint, it's doable. The property can be served by the district sewer. The individual would be responsible for all the costs to hook it up. He'd have to run a 1,000-foot line down to the manhole and connect. It could open up some other areas that could also connect to that system.
So why would we expect the property to be annexed into the city as well?
Well, it's not contiguous with the city for one reason. The city limits are along this line.
Okay.
So it's not contiguous with the city, and you'd have to annex a bunch of property.
Okay, so the benefit here then is just a dilution of overhead, pick up another
That's
customer.
Basically just going to allow the sewer district to make a little more money, yes.
Okay.
is some problems up there with that too.
And part of the sewer agreement that you have with the district, any expansions in their boundaries has to be approved by the city council. So what we're asking for tonight is a motion to proceed with the annexation, and then bring back an amendment to their agreement that would add this area to that district.
Any questions from City Council, Ryan?
Every time we do this, we are giving a disincentive to people to become part of the city and to be annexed into the city. We're providing, semi-city services here, but they're not part of the city. That's a problem. This one's not even connected to the city. It's not touching the city. It's not even touching the sewer district that he wants to annex it into. I mean, where does this end?
Right.
This is a slippery slope. I've been here for 6 years. I've seen these one after another. Where does this end? Are there 50 more? 100 more? If people want city services, they should be part of the city and pay property taxes in the city.
Yeah, in this case, it's a challenge because everything in red is not in the city, so it's not even feasible. But I see your point.
But every time we do this, we're giving people less reason to be annexed into the city.
I feel very much like you, Brian, but I think if it bordered on the city, if this property bordered on the city, I would be the first one to say you should be coming into the city for the reasons you mentioned. But in this case, it's physically impossible. But again, I take your point. Any other questions? There's a request for a motion to proceed with the discussions to annex the property into the Shady Oaks Sewer District.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
That's 2, I believe.
3.
3. Let the record show 3 noes. Moving on to claims and/or fiscal transactions. Brady's going to spend a lot of money here.
Good evening. This is a little bit of an unusual year for us in that we've planned and scheduled replacement of 3 trucks within our fleet, whereas normally we would be looking at 1, maybe 2 at the most each year. But nonetheless, these 3 trucks are scheduled and slated for replacement. They're all individual different trucks used for different purposes, and they are key components for the services that we provide. So starting out, first of all, I think the 10 cubic yard truck is up first. This type of a truck is a small Packer truck. It's a smaller version of the normal, of its bigger brother that you would see normally used as a sanitation truck. This truck is used in a variety of recycling collections, residential, commercial. It's versatile enough it can be used for yard waste collection and so forth. We've had real good responses on our bid requests for these. After reviewing the bids for this particular truck and making sure all the specs meet what we need, we're recommending awarding the bid to the vendor with the lowest bid, which is Elliott Equipment out of Grandview for a price of $118,515. And that tabulation says a 2020 model, but honestly the sales reps aren't sure if we'll get a 19 or a 20. It depends on the timing. They're not real sure when the manufacturers will make that switch.
Need a motion on that one?
Be happy to answer any questions.
Second.
The price is the same, right?
Correct.
Okay.
There's a motion to award the bid to Elliott Equipment. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next item.
And just as a note on that, these trucks, they take a long time for manufacturers, so once we place the order on these, we're typically looking at least 6 to 8 months to get these, so that's why at this point we're not real sure what the models will be. We'll probably receive these sometime next summer. Next up is a 20-yard Packer truck. This is a standard sanitation truck with rear loader capacities. you'll have the tabulation there in front of you, and you'll see there are some lower bid prices other than what I'm recommending for the purchase, and those lower, those trucks that are bid lower, they do not meet the specifications on the Packer body that we need for our system. So the lowest bid that meets our specifications that I'm recommending is a 2019 International with a Loadmaster coming from Shepherd's out of Jeff City for $153, $397 and 34 cents.
Move approved.
Second.
Motion made and second to award the bid to Shepherd's International. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Bid is awarded.
Okay, next up, last but not least, is a bid tabulation on a roll-off truck. This is a heavily used truck. This truck carries the construction and demolition boxes for construction and demo jobs. It also services the compactors for our large retailers that we pick up at their site, take them to the transfer station, and then return those to the retailer site. I'm recommending the low bid on this purchase as well, which is a 2019 Freightliner with a Galbraith hoist system from Armory Equipment out of Arnold, Missouri, or Armory Equipment out of Arnold, Missouri for $124,936. And before I wrap it up, I just want to mention, I think it's in all the narratives, but once these new trucks are received, it'd be my recommendation to sell the surplus vehicles on the auction site, and we've had good success with that. Be happy to answer any questions on the roll-off truck.
Approved. Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Bid is awarded to Armor Equipment. Next item is a motion awarding a bid for Bueller Park restrooms. Floyd?
So Bueller Park last had a bathroom in 2004. It was built in the 60s and basically just over time it's kind of deteriorated. So since then we've been using portables to fill that need. So that was before Prop P tax that was passed by the citizens. So since then we've had a couple of open houses to garner that support, which was there because the citizens told us that that was pretty much one of the things that they thought was important use for those tax dollars. So this actual facility that we're asking for tonight is the same facility we put in with council approval at Green Acres. The pictures you have before are actually of the Green Acres bathroom. The company basically does this precast, and they will deliver and do the setup. So the amount we're asking for is for the building as well as the additional cost for the water, sewer, and electric hookup that we'll be doing. CXT still has the state bid, which that's why there's such a disparity in the three proposals before you. So that is what we're recommending. We actually ran this also by the Park Advisory Board, and they approved it unanimously at their last meeting. Questions?
Floyd, I have a question, if I may. Every now and then I hear criticism from the citizens that said, $72,000 for a bathroom, are you crazy? So could you at least mention what other options were available and the implications of those other options?
Well, the first thing that we would have preferred to do actually is have the RTI students build it for us. Now that would have been some cost savings, although not as much as you might think. But unfortunately, their trades class is tied up with another project for us that they're doing right now. If you've been to Berwyn Park, you know that they're building shade structure and storage units for us at the tennis court. So they've got one basically done, and they've still got another one they've got to finish. So they're really not going to be able to get onto this project probably, they told us, until the next school year. So this is something that we also presented to the council as part of the Bueller Park Master Plan, which council approved at that time. And so this is like the next step in that process. Now this particular bathroom, bathrooms are expensive, but this one, there's also one built by the same company at the Doolittle exit. They're pretty, as much as you can make, vandal-proof building. We've actually had, unfortunately, an incident of vandalism already at the Green Acres bathroom, but it's pretty pretty hard to make a difference in that thing. It's pretty indestructible, and actually, I guess if we had some bad weather, it would be probably a safe place to be. So, part of it is you're also paying for that. Stainless steel structures that we have in there, and of course, like I said, what you see there on the pictures are exactly what we have at Green Acres. So this would be identical, same structure, same setup, same deal. Only difference between this one and the one we have at Green Acres is there's a $2,000 additional cost that's in that price for a external ADA water fountain that's attached to the building.
Thank you. Brian?
I see 3 bids on here, all from out-of-state companies. Why are we not trying to find local companies to do this?
Well, when we did a research and tried to talk to people, I can't find any Missouri companies that build bathrooms on this scale like this. These actually, if you look at the home bases for these, all 3 that we have listed there, they're all pretty much up from the Northwest. So I'm not sure why that's the case, or why there's not like firms like in Texas, or at least in the region, much less in Missouri, that would build these, but these are pretty large companies. If you go to the CXT Incorporated website, you see that they do a lot of precast buildings. They do a lot with railroad stuff. These are pretty large firms. So I have not been able to find somebody locally. If we did, or at least in the region, I would be more inclined to do that. But the fact that these folks have the Missouri state bid, and they've had it now for 2 years running, that's actually approved by state government. That's not us. So I would think that if there were such a Missouri company, they would be looking for them as well. And I haven't found them, so clearly they haven't either.
Well, I don't understand why one of our numerous local contractors couldn't do this. I mean, they build houses, they build commercial buildings. They can build a bathroom, can't they?
I suppose they could. I don't think we've ever tried that, but I'm open to that if that's what
I
you
mean, we're
want.
talking about over $50,000 here that could potentially go to a local company. That's a concern to me. And we're sending it to another state. And we haven't even tried to contact and get bids from local contractors.
I can reach out, come back again. That's not a problem.
I'm trying to remember what we had looked at, a traditional construction facility, and it seemed to me the price was way higher than the precast, but I don't remember the dollar amount now. I remember hearing $70,000 was what we spent in Schumann Pond with the trades program.
Right, it was about that.
And it seemed like it was 6 figures on a block building, but it's going back now several years.
Well, the other 2 proposals are, these are mass manufacturer folks. There'd be economies of scale in the price. I'm not.
You may be right, but we don't know that because we haven't asked for bids from local companies. You might be right, but we don't know that.
I think if we do ask somebody here, they're going to have to go with the prevailing wage, and I'll guarantee you it'll be higher than the $52,000 plus the $20,000 it's going to take to plummet and stuff like that.
Well, you might be right, but we don't know that because we haven't bothered to ask.
Well, I think you did, and I think one other time it was, like John said, I think it was in the 6 figures by the time they got.
I just can't remember the amount.
I can't remember either. It could be done. There's nothing that says this has to be awarded tonight if we want to go to bid. The local people are going to know day one if they're interested or not interested. So we can go to bid and bring it back in 2 weeks.
We'd have to design it.
Yeah, give them time.
Because they're not going to be able to do a prefab, so we're going to do a design on a facility.
I'd make a motion that we award this bid.
I'm just curious, the people that manufacture these, do they come with some kind of warranty or anything like that?
Yes.
I'm almost positive that our local folks wouldn't be able to provide something like that price.
That's noted in the.
Well, once again, you might be right, but we don't know. We're making guesses at this point.
There's a motion to award. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion to award and second. Let's say, have a show of hands. All those in favor of awarding the bid, raise your hand. Tie? Was 6-6?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
What was it?
6-6.
Oh.
Oh, all right. All in favor, all against the award, raise your hand. So it's a tie.
Getting used to this.
2 weeks is gonna be anything.
I think we're going to find not much interest or an expensive price. However, your point is well taken. We don't know until we ask. So I'd say let's go to the local market, give the local market one chance with a reasonably short time frame and see what we come up with.
Sounds good.
And we can do that, but Steve, we probably need to look at what's going to be involved with the design. That's probably a sealed design project. It's going to have to be bid out for comparison purposes. So let's before the next meeting see what's involved with that. My guess is we're probably talking $5,000 to $10,000 to do a design close to that. But we'll talk about that and bring it back.
$5,000 to $10,000 to design a bathroom?
About 10%. Engineering fees are about 10%. I mean, you're gonna have to spec it specifically. I'm not saying not do it. We'll bring it back in a couple of weeks and verify that. But typically, 10% is a pretty good engineer's estimate on design work. So if this is somewhere between $70,000 and $100,000, you pay it. Now, I'm saying if we paid an engineer to do that, that'd be the case. If we can do it in-house, we just need to see what's involved with that.
Steve, what do you think you're going to do and at what price? You could design a lot of things. Surely you can do a bathroom. I mean, they need to be apples and apples. So is there anything that prevents us doing what this is?
Well, because that's a prefab facility, and we're certain that's not being done in Missouri. So we're going to have to do a traditional block building, and they can be designed. RMU does that on that'd be a good number to go back. I think RMU has done bids on cinder block buildings for well houses, which aren't much different from this. It seems to me like the number was shockingly high, but let us come back with that information in 2 weeks.
How long is this bid for from CPX?
It's
Right now, their state bid through Missouri, unless it gets extended again, goes through December 3rd.
December 30th?
December 3rd.
Oh.
December 3rd, number 3.
3rd?
Yeah, December 3rd. They have the state bid for the last 2 years. This is the second year of the contract. It ends December.
So
They
you're
possibly
telling me
may
that
get it renewed.
there's a likelihood that this is going to go up.
It's possible if they don't renew the agreement with Missouri.
And they made it sound like
That wasn't enough.
Let me think about this.
They made it, oh, it's easy, we'll just go back in 2 weeks.
I'm not sure if we had that information, that vote would have went the same way.
Council meeting's on December 3rd.
At night.
I'd like to reconsider the vote.
Well, I think
I know, I'm going to reconsider my vote for a second.
Yeah, they made we were misled.
Are these votes in pencil or in pen?
We weren't. We were told it would be a simple thing.
Am I at liberty to change my vote?
Ask your turn.
I'm hearing that there's some discussion about reconsidering. I mean, I think we can.
Make a motion to reconsider.
Yeah,
Like to make a
I would
motion.
do that.
In the same
rather than
meeting.
just start
Second
taking
that.
votes.
Okay, is there a motion?
Because there's new information now presented to all of you.
My guess
so-
is somebody that voted for a no has to make that recommendation, right? Or
So
reconsider.
somebody in
I move
the
that we
affirmative,
reconsider
so
the vote.
yes.
Somebody who denied it.
Somebody that denied
The
it.
majority.
So is there anyone that denied it that would like to make a motion to reconsider?
I move that we reconsider the vote.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second it.
Motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Now reconsider.
Okay. So now we're back to square zero.
Hang
Is
on.
there anyone that would like to make a motion to award the bid?
I'd make a motion we would.
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is awarded.
Can we not do this next time?
We will do it next
You
time. We will look
started
at
it.
No, we do plan to do a couple more of these, so we can get a bid out for that.
Okay, Mayor and/or City Council comments. I have two. The first is, David alluded to a little earlier. A proclamation was issued today in recognition of Small Business Week and Small Business Saturday, which is coming up on the 24th. Normally I read these proclamations, but I'm not going to do it this time, but I want to read a few other things. Every now and then we get on this discussion of what does local business mean to a city like ours. The city of Rolla annually issues about 1,200 business licenses and employs approximately 10,000 people. So collectively, small business is the largest employer in the city of Rolla. Our best guess is between 25 and 35% of our sales tax comes to small business. There are 7 things that I say to folks when we get on discussion of shopping locally. So I'm going to read those to you. These are our friends and neighbors that invest their money and energy in opening a locally owned business. These are the people that employ many of us and provide our paycheck. These are the people that very often employ our teenagers and young adults, giving them their very first work experience. These are the people that typically are our civic leaders who take an active part in the future of Rolla. These are the people that are there whenever an organization or group looks to fundraise a myriad of causes and needs. These are the people that reinvest their hard-earned profits in Rolla and Phelps County and do not export their dividends to other areas. And finally, money spent locally on sales tax never ever leaves Rolla or Phelps County. It's reinvested locally. So I would ask you, please, with a holiday shopping season coming upon us, that you consider local small business.
You're here.
You're here. The second item, Sindra alluded to in her presentation. So the Rolla Regional Economic Commission Board, for those that are still relatively new here, that board is comprised of various types of seats. The original founding partners, of which there are 5, all have the opportunity to place one person on the board. The city of Rolla, by virtue of the contribution or the amount of contribution to that particular entity, is to provide, with your consent, 3 board seats. And the balance of the 4 board seats are nominated and selected by the funding partners themselves. So there's 2 board seats that are coming up. One is the city appointment, and the other one on the heels of that is going to be one from the funding partners. In talking to the executive committee, it's important that board membership matches the needs of an organization at any one point in time. And right now, labor is an issue. Labor is an issue nationwide in terms of quality and availability. So we would like to use this board seat for somebody that's going to help the board understand and appreciate some of these labor issues that we have in front of us. So with your consent, I would like to appoint Alexandria Blackwell. Alexandria is the executive director of the Central Workforce Development Board. This is not an entity that I was at all familiar with, so I had to do a little bit looking up. In the Workforce Development Board, their mission is to ensure quality workforce and development over a 19-county region. And believe it or not, they are based right here in Rolla, I think on Black Street, if I'm not mistaken. They're chartered by the federal government to provide oversight and workforce development activities in central Missouri. They set policy and select and supervise providers of employment and training programs. So we would like Alexandra to help us understand the local labor market, quality and amount, and then help us understand and assess the regional capabilities, because there's a lot of people that sort of deal with workforce issues in our region. Some private, some public, some do training, some do placement type of thing. So we would very much like someone on our board that has a real good understanding of this. So again, with your consent, I would like to appoint Alexandra Blackwell to the RRBC board.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, and I would like to publicly thank Robert Tessero, who was the previous board member, for at least 2 terms. Any other council comments?
Yeah, I'm curious about the intersection of 63 and 72, the new, with the new traffic patterns. Are we studying traffic patterns, or is our consultant looking at that?
There was some traffic studies, I think, in the spring, but I'll defer to Darren or Steve.
Just curious, it's,
The TDE board authorized us to enter a contract with HTTP.
Steve, why don't you wait till you
On
get up?
several projects.
Wait till you get up here.
The TDE board authorized us to enter into a contract with HTTP on several projects. One of those projects is intersection improvements at 63 and 72, and along with some intersection improvements at 63 and Kings Highway.
72.
And
But
we're
aren't we
also-
doing a traffic study in the spring?
We're also going to look at how we're accessing that entire neighborhood, including Walmart and the residential area around it. There's going to have to be some changes in traffic patterns on. I think one of the things that the old traffic patterns of trying to use Walker as a cut through over to Kings Highway, that's probably creating more problems than it's helping. And I think as people get used to the intersection, that's going to improve. But we knew from the very beginning we were going to have to do some improvements there at 72 and 63.
yeah, I just was curious about a timeline, so it sounds like.
We're hoping that we're going to be able to get that out to contractor to bid in late summer.
What's your prognosis on Walker up there? Somebody's going to get hit or killed right there at that intersection if you don't slow them down.
Walker at 72?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's being looked
one
at
of our
as well.
concerns.
And traffic was lined up clear back down to Strobach when I come through there this evening to come up here, waiting to get across there. And it's, can't believe we're running 40 miles an hour through there either.
Well, there's a speed limit. It goes down to 25 as we go through that, down to that intersection.
If people are not paying any attention to it, you might as well start it from the other end at 25 miles an hour and make them go 25 through there, because there in Spillman's going to get somebody hurt.
I just have a question similar to what John had asked there in terms of, is that same template of looking at the intersection happening at Kings Highway and 72 on that end of it too? Kind of on the Menard side, Kings Highway and 72, in terms of the traffic pattern there and
I mean, we'll be looking at that, but that's not part of this next round of work that we're doing with H&TB.
Right.
We had some growing pains with that one, getting it and all the improvements done there at the intersection. That was still all under construction when we opened it, so we weren't up to full capacity, and we just recently reset the timing on that signal to allow for it. So
that's what I was kind of wondering. Is it the city of Rolla that controls that signal as opposed to the DOT?
we do, yes.
You are using the 72 extension now?
Huh?
You heard me.
I don't use it. That is.
I got some witnesses.
Hey, I guarantee you.
Do you like it?
Well, I went to dinner Saturday night, and they all said they liked it, and I told them I hated them because they didn't like it.
Okay. Any other council comments?
I'll say Bishop is much nicer to drive on these days.
Citizen communications. Anyone that would like to speak to city council? Lane, name and address for the record.
Yes, and I'm going to read this to be concise and for time, to save time. My name is Elaine Grover, and I live at 1203 Vista Drive, Rolla. I wanted to speak to you tonight as some of you have been elected to the City Council more recently and may not be aware of the issues which have affected the Vista Drive neighborhood due to the marketplace development. I recently received a letter, as did my neighbors, that the city had acquired a house of one of the neighbors at the end of our dead-end street. Apparently the city asked the TDD to purchase the house, then it was deeded back to the city to be used as a rental until it can be used in another way. This house, as well as others in close proximity, have been discussed as pivotal to some of the plans of the city regarding the building of an outer road and overpass, which would open Vista Drive, take several houses, and destroy the neighborhood as we currently know it. The neighbors of Vista Drive have met with several of you from the city with our concerns about any moves to open the street to traffic other than current residents. Most of us bought our houses because it is a dead-end street. We have children playing in the area, and we're able to keep track of who comes and goes in the area. We worry that opening it will increase safety risks from traffic and non-residents in the area, as well as affect our property values. We were assured by the city that there was neither money nor intentions to make these changes for many years to come, possibly 20 years if ever pursued. Now that a house has been purchased, we are once again left to worry and wonder what will come next. If the plans are so far in the future, why would the city get involved in this land acquisition at this point? Why would the city be getting into a long-term rental situation? Will they use a management company? Is this a proper role for the city? The house next to the one acquired by the city is for sale, as the owner has moved to the veterans home. Does the city intend to make a deal with the TDD to purchase this home as well? Surely you can see why this is a concern for us. The city tries to convince us that we have nothing to worry about, yet makes moves such as this, which indicate they are moving ahead with their plans. Should the city ask the TDD to spend taxpayer money on the purchase of rental property? The mayor has tried to assure us that by saying that the TDD doesn't have the money for the projects which would affect us, but yet it has money to buy a house for no immediate purpose. Residents in this city were not given a chance to vote on the increased tax, which we pay every time we make a purchase. Would they agree with the way the money is being spent by the city and the TDD? We want to continue to invest in our property and to enjoy safety and closeness of our unique little neighborhood. But just when we think we can safely do this, another move is made to make us wonder if it is wise to do so. One neighbor with a young family told me that they would move if the city were open to traffic, as it would be a safety issue for their children. The safety factor was the reason they chose that house. A bike path has also been discussed. I think we should have some say about this as well, and it should be justified, as it seems to me there are many more practical and less intrusive places to build a bike trail, not to mention ones that would have better terrain. I think this location is being driven by for the marketplace, concern for the marketplace, with little concern for the tax-paying residents who will be negatively impacted. With regard to an outer road, it makes much more sense to put it on the south side, where no houses or highway patrol would be impacted. It would be more beneficial to the hospital, and it would be completed sooner with less expense and negative impact to the Vista Drive neighborhood. I ask you to consider these issues before approving any further actions that cause unwanted changes in this small, close-knit neighborhood. If you want to maintain a sense of community in this town, you cannot destroy unique neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine.
Hi, Carol. Hi, I'm Charlotte Wiggins. I live at 1001 Bluebird Lane, and I served on the city council from 1999 to 2007. I was in Ward 6 then, and now I understand I live in Ward 5. I didn't move, the city moved. I'm here to answer your questions, as well as make sure we all have the same information. I think you heard Elaine give you the perspective from a resident of my neighborhood. And I'm here to talk about the public involvement process that I see the city's improving on, but still struggling with. John's questions to the KUMR, KMST reporter was a good indication of that. Earlier this month, I sent you a letter about the city's purchase of the home in the neighborhood. And tonight, you also got a copy of the mayor's response to that letter, as well as my response to that. I want you all to see it. I want us all here to understand what's been exchanged, what's been perceived, what issues are. And I want to tell you that if you made a decision about this home because the city didn't hear from the neighbors, that's not correct. The reason the neighbor came to the city to sell his house, to offer his house to the city, was his wife saw on the city map that the bike path was proposed. She was concerned about how close that would be to their home. And then John Butts asked me what the neighbors would feel about the bike path. And so, without knowing what the city was planning, I called the neighbors together. We walked around the neighborhood, and we tried to figure out where a bike path might go. and couldn't figure that out. And then they kept asking me, well, why are we even looking at a bike path now when the city's not doing anything in this neighborhood? So I asked John. He said, well, it's to connect the fraternities to the shopping center. Now, if you've not been out there, some of you have, that connection, these are two dead-end streets, Vista and Bluebird. If you try to connect at the shopping center, you could probably qualify for a Disneyland ride. I mean, it is a very steep, you can't drive it easily. It would not be a good walking path, but it'd be excellent for mountain bikers that want a challenge. And so I called John back. My mistake was I didn't put it in writing. I called him back, told him what the neighbors had said. For those of you who may remember me on the city council, I was an advocate for sidewalks and bike paths. So my answer to John was, he had told me that the city was planning sidewalks from Highway E down to the Highway Y junction. And I said, the terrain back there is a little more forgiving than the terrain that connects either Vista or Bluebird to the shopping center. Why not consider that property as for a sidewalk bike path? It would be safer too. You're not bringing all those bicyclists through the neighborhood. And my mistake was I didn't put it in writing. So that's what I did. That's why you all have copies of the letter. You have.
I was just going to say, do we have copies of that here?
Are you talking about
I sent it this afternoon.
Your email.
You talking about the email?
Yeah, the email.
Oh, okay.
You all individually have emails because I made sure it went to you individually.
Does everybody check their email?
I have 3
Everybody
jobs,
gets
so it behooves me to have a paper copy here.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure. I just want to make that point because I'm not sure that everybody here has read it. I actually think I have, but I'm not sure that everybody has.
Yeah, you may not have seen your inbox before the city council meeting. That's why I'm here to say.
Okay.
I want to make sure you know it's there. And I'm really glad also to see some of the mayor's comments about the city's considering some of the recommendations that people have made to the city outside of the shopping center proposal, because I know the schedule was very tight. My bottom line here is the city needs to continue improving its public involvement process. Don and I have gone back many years on that. You don't know that there's a problem if I don't tell you that there is an issue and that there's room for improvement. So if the city was planning a bike path through this neighborhood, I know it was on the city plan, and they wanted to consider where to put it, the neighbors didn't know that, because I called one of them this afternoon and said, why didn't you, because I gave them city points of contact and names, and I said, okay, they're asking this question, you need to provide feedback. And they didn't because, she said, I didn't because I didn't think the city was planning anything.
Charlotte?
Yeah.
I don't know if we have that drawing here, but I'm pretty sure it's on the Rolla West master.
Yes, it is. And she said she knew that she had seen the Rolla West map before she bought in the neighborhood. She's a new neighbor. But she didn't know that the city was making some kind of decision about buying property or bike paths or whatever, or she would have followed up. Because in your note to me, you said, well, you didn't hear from the neighbors. They asked me.
No, don't put words in my mouth.
I'm sorry, that's how I interpreted.
That is not what I said.
Okay, go ahead and clarify. That's why we're here. Let's talk together. Yes.
I never have said that I didn't hear from neighbors.
Okay, well, that's
where
what
I disagree is the correlation between what you refer to as we're not being soliciting public comment and a difference of opinion. I think the city, frankly, has done one hell of a job seeking public opinion. This is probably more transparent of a project than anyone that I've been associated with 25 years. Could we do better, Charlotte? Yes, we can do better.
That's what I'm here to discuss.
I don't doubt, but we have made a giant step forward. Now, that doesn't mean that people are always going to agree, okay? Right. But that's a different story.
That's right. There's two different things.
Story.
There's the people who want their agenda, and they're going to continue fighting because they want what they want. Yeah. And then there are people like me who want to make sure that people get heard and get their
right. But we are committed to a very transparent process. That's why there's a website set up. We're putting it out there. We're putting it out there.
Well, the neighbors didn't know that there was a proposed bike path. The property would be purchased for proposed bike path. I'm just the messenger here.
Okay, but let me clarify that.
So,
that bike path, correct me if I'm wrong, John, is on a document that's been out in the public since 2007.
I don't know the year, but I know it's been I've seen it online.
Okay, so I don't understand how in the same breath somebody can say, well, I don't know the city had an eye towards an eventual bike path.
They didn't know that the city was buying property in the neighborhood right now.
That's a different story.
That's what I'm.
Okay,
that's what I'm
but you
saying.
Connecting it to, we didn't know there was a bike path is not correct.
No, I didn't. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. These people knew it because when they moved in the neighborhood, they have to disclose what the city's plans are.
Right, okay. As long as we
What
agree
they
that they're
didn't
two
know-
separate issues.
Right, what they didn't know was that the city was looking to buy property for a bike path immediately in the neighborhood. Does
The
that
city
make
was,
sense?
the city was, the city was approached by the owners. The city didn't go knocking on doors looking to buy
Right, that's
property.
correct. The owner.
So the city reacted. The choice of that property, if you look at the Move Rolla plans, it's the one piece of property that's the pinch point. So whether it's an outer road or an overpass or a bike trail, all of
Absolutely.
the above.
Yes.
It is the property that's impacted the most.
Agreed.
I didn't mean
That's
to-
why we're here. No, that's why we're here. I want to make sure that it's something in writing. You responded, I responded to you, and I thought, I'm going to come here and make sure that you all get to hear us discuss this, so there's no question about it. And I have neighbors that are sitting there going, well, so they can hear this as well, hopefully, and we can move forward.
I just want to present a little perspective from just one of the council people here that was part of the decision. I'm not your ward council person, but personally I care for all residents of all neighborhoods. If something comes up in another ward and it's going to affect the neighbors, I want to know, because like you said, whether it's new development or change in whatever way, those are the people that are currently there, those are the people that are affected, those are the current taxpayers. We need to look at that. So I want to be a champion for neighborhoods and for people that are already in place. And I want you all to know that. On the same hand, I want to be a balanced person and look at all proposals. In this specific instance, I want to tell you what I was thinking to give a little bit of insight. It's true this was approached to the city, hey, there's this spot that's a pinch point. For me, I'd actually remembered some of the concerns that I think your group had brought before about even the bike trail on Vista Drive, even the bike trail on Bluebird being concerned. I remember talking to, I think it was Steve Hargis, mentioning that even a bike path, if we wanted to avoid Bluebird and Vista, we potentially could put a bike path in front. I mean, this is a possibility if we discuss with those players too, in front of the highway patrol and away from the neighbors. That was a discussion we had at the point of having of this property. My thought was, if we want to at least be sensitive to the neighbors there and consider that we could ever have a bike path there in the future, we could not get by without that property. Now, we weren't going looking for that. I don't remember any discussions before that until the actual neighbor proposed, hey, there's the pinch point that we've talked about, whatever, and then we started discussing with Steve Hargis, et cetera. So I just want to mention from one council person's perspective, I don't see this as like, hey, we've already got plans in the back of our heads to railroad something through. There's going to be a clover leaf in your neighborhood, and there's going to be a huge highway going through it or anything. As much as even for the tiniest, in my mind, most sensitively put bike path to avoid going through your neighborhood, we might need that as a pinch point.
Yes,
so I guess I was looking at it as the most conservative plan if we were going to do a bike path to protect your neighborhood. Just so you see that there are people on council that are considering your neighborhood and do want to see neighborhoods in Rolla protected in general and want their input, and thank you for coming.
Well, Josh spent 3 years. He was one of the 3 neighbors who got the letter saying your property might be impacted by the city's plans. And his wife has not slept well in that time. And so he came to the city. He told me he came to the city and offered the property when they saw the bike path on the map. Now, why he looked there or I don't know. But he wanted to put it, he didn't want that hanging over his head, which is why he offered the property. And he's going to stay in the neighborhood. He's leasing the property, and may lease it for a few years, which is, I'm personally glad because I like Josh. But the bottom line is I wanted you to understand what had happened because I had talked to my 2 council members. I talked to several others of you who had asked questions, and I thought it would be best if we all were in the same room talking about the same thing, hearing the same information, so there's no misconceptions about what's happening. And if the city really was doing that for a bike path, then there was a better way than calling, sending me an email saying, Charlotte, what do your neighbors think? I didn't give you my opinion. I gave you the opinion of what my neighbors shared. If they didn't follow up, they didn't think they needed to follow up. So there was a disconnect. Bottom line, there's a disconnect between you wanting information maybe from the neighbors and my neighbors knowing what to do. That's public involvement, and that can be improved. But thank you for the improvements you've made so far. This making progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me see. Any other? Ready?
Very briefly, the Thanksgiving holiday, because this collection schedule throws more people a curve than any of our other collection holidays. That is because with the holiday on Thursday, with Wednesday being our flex day, we have to come a day early. So the normal Thursday collection routes will be the only ones that are impacted. We will work Friday, so that won't be impacted. So I think you guys' area is going to be the only one. So if you talk to anybody, have them put it out for a Wednesday collection, okay?
Hey, Brady, let's try Everbridge. See if we can pull up that area. And we haven't had much success using Everbridge. It's the notification system.
I have not used it, John.
I thought it was only for emergencies.
No, there's actually a way that you can register all kinds of things. Now, the data is not very accurate, and the people didn't go on there and subscribe. But let's just look and see if there's a way that we can send a message out that way.
Yeah, we briefly talked about that in the past, but I have never used it.
This day early is a tough message to get out there. I've seen it on Facebook, social media. I've seen it around, but it's just hard to get.
We send out PSAs, and just a lot of people miss that, so they tend to miss their collection for that week, which is a holiday week. It's not good. The other thing I'll mention while I'm up here is that we're still collecting leaves in the brown paper bags. That's a seasonal service, and we'll do that up and through December 14th, and then we'll suspend it for the really harsh winter months, and then resume that in March. But the compost site will remain open year-round for folks who need to haul brush or leaves. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jimmy Dale.
Yeah, on the bike path, since when did we give TDD Commission the right to buy property, not bringing it back to us? Okay.
This council at least 3 occasions discussed this issue.
Well, we discussed the issues, but you didn't. They didn't. Nobody said you was going to allow TDD Commission to go in there and buy the property.
You told me how to vote.
Are we getting into?
Okay.
I'm just curious if we're getting into any kind of closed session matters that would be saved for closed session. Because some of that's, legal issues.
We just got through discussing it.
Not that part.
Well, why in the hell didn't we? I mean, it was saying it was out there.
Isn't it public knowledge at this point?
Yes, but he's referring to things that occurred during closed session, and not all of that is, the result is public knowledge, but I'm just concerned whether or not, and have to advise whether or not we're getting into.
Well, I withdraw my information that I could put out there then. I'll take it back. Nobody listened, nobody heard me, so forget it.
We don't listen to you.
Any other council comments? Oh, I'm sorry, citizen communication. Comments for the go to the order?
It's Thanksgiving, drive safe.
Drive safe. Deer are still moving. We have one item for closed session. It's a legal issue. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second. Roll call vote.
Yay.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.